I'm with Chris Thomas, the co-founder and partner of Assembly Ventures, a speaker at the Smart Mobility Conference on how ready are we for autonomous vehicles. Chris, thanks for being with us.
No, thanks for having me.
First of all, just give us an overview of Assembly Ventures and what you do.
Sure. So Assembly is the first transatlantic mobility fund in the world. We're investing around the Western world in young companies that move the world. So we define the space that we're looking at as the physical and digital movement of people, goods, data, and energy. So any company that's impacting anything from autonomous to electrification to supply chain, logistics, manufacturing. We're investing in those companies and looking to bring really unique insights as it relates to what we've done as a partnership and the types of access we have to differentiated leaders, thought leaders, economic leaders, and otherwise.
And you recently just announced a project that you invested in recently 2 weeks ago. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so we announced our first transaction, which is super excited, a company called Our Next Energy 1.ai, based in the state of Michigan, but an amazing syndicate that include Breakthrough Energy Ventures. This is Bill Gates' billion-dollar fund investing in kind of new energy systems, BMW, Volta out of Chicago, and Flex, one of the premier kind of technology manufacturers out of Singapore and San Francisco. But this is a company that's looking at how do we get much more range out of batteries in an economic way, and how do we look at the supply chain of the components that are going into those batteries to make sure they're both under the control of the West and within our purview, but also that are ethically sourced.
And I guess these batteries will be used obviously for vehicles, but I guess construction machinery, any kind of machinery.
Great question.
That moves.
So I think sometimes people think about autonomous, or they think about energy in a siloed context around just automotive, and that's certainly a big market. But when we think about the way the world moves, we're thinking about terrestrial movement, air, land, and sea, but also space, and there's going to be different utilizations of kind of propellants around the types of asset you're looking at. But it's not just auto. It's going to be around manufactured assets. It's going to be looking at large fleets of different types, and that's what gets exciting.
On to today's discussion and how ready we for autonomous vehicles. A loaded question, but how ready are we? How ready is the world for level 5 autonomy in vehicles?
So I love that they named the panel "How Ready Are We?" and it really goes to the use cases. So are we ready for full-scale autonomy in dense urban centers with a combination of autonomous and human drivers? I don't think we're quite there. Are we ready for autonomous at low speeds within kind of defined geospatials in which they're utilizing and doing a certain task? I think we are. Are we ready for autonomy in warehouses? Are we ready for autonomy in loading zones within kind of logistical and kind of manufacturing assets? We've had that for years. And so autonomy is something we're going to continue to see, like what that is and how it deploys. But the amazing thing about it, in my mind, having worked with some of the companies who are now leaders in that from an automotive perspective, as well as from a kind of a middle mile delivery logistics perspective, is that you're giving people back their time. What does autonomy really give us? Our needs are few, but our wants are many. I think what we want is more efficiency. What we want as individuals in that vehicle is to make sure that we're home faster, or we can do things while en route that give us the ability to be more efficient. Yeah. And that's what I get excited.
Yeah, I guess it's a fine balance, isn't it? Because people also love to drive. They love the experience of getting behind the wheel of a car, V8 or your Porsche or whatever. That experience of that thrill of driving your car and drifting or whatever, turning, and I guess autonomous vehicles takes that away from it.
I don't think it's mutually exclusive. You're a son of Christchurch. I'm a son of Detroit. I think we both love to drive.
Yeah, it's in our culture.
Yeah, for different reasons. And I know for a fact, I have 2 young boys. They're good boys from Detroit. They're going to have their driver's license. They're going to love to be out on the road. But my granddaughter, someday, will she need a driver's license? No. Does that mean that she's not moving around the world? Absolutely not. We're going to have a completely different paradigm of these optimized modes, air, land, and sea going point to point. Yeah. But the desire, I think, to be the master of your domain, to be able to take yourself from A to B, that's something that's going to continue. And I think there is, it's an interesting question. I think none of us have ponies or horses anymore. Yeah. But will we continue to want to be behind a wheel? I think the answer is yes. At least I think it will.
Well, I think it's that balance, isn't it? So I'd love to be able to get behind the wheel at the same time. If I have that option to just step away and let the car take over, I can do a bit of work or look at my phone or whatever, then I can do that as well.
I agree.
I guess regulation, infrastructure, that's critical, right? Partnerships between government and regulators and the policymakers and of course the manufacturers and the end users. That whole sort of collaboration to make this thing move forward. So that it must be critical. And are we doing enough? Are governments doing enough in terms of regulations and policies to bring that autonomous vehicle to our roads?
No. But I love that you said infrastructure. I think something that we've done, at Assembly is most people are familiar with CASE or ACES, Connected Autonomous Shared Electric. We believe strongly that's the wrong framework. We put something forward we call ISA, which begins with infrastructure as the bedrock of mobility, the systems layer that connects the atoms and the bytes, the physical and the digital, and the applications layer that allows for customer engagement or monetization. But the framework that we look at, how are we deploying these assets, and then what is the overarching regulatory framework as well? One of the great questions we got right at the end of the panel today was, what do we need in terms of optimized structures? Do we need to be all governmental led? Or do we need PPPs? And in my opinion, if we want to optimize outcomes, we certainly need government at the table. We need individuals with experience and understand this sector that are in those kind of public positions. But the private sector is going to drive so much of that innovation and the value creation that's going to be there. So it has to be both. But the answer to your core question, I think, is no. We have to move faster. The faster we can get to a combined regulatory regime, the better that we're going to be able to bring solutions and efficiencies to consumers, which is what we all want.
Yeah, because the technology is there and it's already advanced. Most cars already have level 1, at least level 1 autonomy to certain.
Well, certainly level 2. I think when you think about advanced ADAS or 2+, I think there's a variety of different solutions. Super Cruise is probably the one that's most known as having, you need to remain aware, but you can get to very safe autonomous environments on freeways and arterials in different environments. But that jump to kind of level 4, which is true autonomy within kind of, the Western world, in which you have signage and road painting and other things that system's going to be able to work off of. That's the vision, and I think that's something that's going to take a little longer to get exactly to where we want it. But one of the other questions we got was, what is the right KPI? What is the right kind of milestone to understand where we're going with autonomy? And there's a saying in the National Basketball League, if you're an American basketball fan, that the ball don't lie. Numbers don't lie, data don't lie. And so I think we have a chance here to not focus on every time there's an accident with an autonomous vehicle, which people do because it's sensational. Yeah, but when we can get to a point where we know empirically autonomy is 2x safer than human drivers.
Yeah.
And that's something I think we can continue to build on.
It's funny, isn't it? Because, and I was just bringing up the safety of autonomous vehicles as well, because when there's an accident with autonomous vehicles, it's headline material, isn't it?
Right.
And it's kind of, you get this impression that it's actually that autonomous vehicles are not safe, that people should be behind the wheel. Is that kind of just PR driven by what's the deal there?
I think it's just sensationalism, but it's interesting you talk about what is over-indexed and what's under-indexed when it comes to autonomy. So we spend a lot of time talking about what are the main drivers, and people talk about how unless we have V2X, we can't have autonomy. Unless we have safety, we can't have autonomy, or trust, maybe in a different context. And V2X is going to be a huge additional kind of layer that'll be a redundancy but not a dependency for autonomous systems. But safety, interestingly enough, you can talk to a lot of people and they're like, I don't want to be in that vehicle. But as soon as they see someone they know that is, then they're in there. And there's a 95 to 98% kind of return of individuals who see that once and then continue to be in those vehicles once they have that peace of mind. And the thing that people don't talk about enough is the importance of physical infrastructure. Very dialed in sensor suites and potholes, they're not friends. And so making sure that our physical infrastructure is squared away, it's something that we don't focus on nearly enough. And then the importance of capital and talent partnerships. How do we bring capital there that's really going to develop this in the most efficient way? And how are we training the individuals in the places we live, where we want these businesses to be a big part of growing those companies going forward?
We're here at Hypermotion Dubai on this particular panel discussion about autonomous vehicles, and of course GM has quite big plans here to develop the autonomous vehicle. Do you think Dubai could be a kind of a poster child for the development of autonomous vehicles, or as a testing ground at least?
One of the things I was talking about in the panel was I think Dubai is uniquely positioned to be a leader when it comes to autonomy, not just within kind of terrestrial auto, but air, land, sea, and space. And so you look at what DP World has done. You look at the ports, you look at the roads, you look at the different infrastructure that's been a big focus of this, especially the big air show that they have every year, which I think is next week or the week after. There's so many ways in which I think this region can be a place where deployments take place and there's wide adoption very quickly because of that PPP mindset. Now, I believe that's something we're going to be able to do the world over. I think that there's these major industrial centers, but it takes will. It takes leadership, and it takes men and women getting around the table and say, we are going to push this because it's safer, because it creates more first and second order benefits, and because people are going to benefit in a huge way that they need not to be made to do anything. But once they're exposed, I think, to these types of efficiencies, people are going to love it.
when it comes to autonomous driving, okay, it makes life easier for us as a consumer. We also want it to be sustainable. We want a net zero future.
Absolutely.
We want to be carbon neutral. Do autonomous vehicles contribute to a sustainable future?
They will. I think when we think about what are vehicles today, like there's a lot of signaling when they buy an electric vehicle today around, look at me and look at how I'm taking care of the earth. When you look at the component parts of that battery, and you look at how they're put together, and you look at all the different things that go into it, and then you're looking at the power sources that are powering those things today, are they really? In some cases, absolutely not. In some cases, maybe a little more. But what I think we're getting to, and what I get excited about, is we're transitioning from an energy perspective. We're utilizing all of the major components we have, especially as migrating toward renewables. But we need to use the assets we have while we are in the midst of that migration to ensure that we can do it successfully. But at scale, with autonomous fleets that are, EVs, that are charged and powered by, if not renewable, then much more efficient energy sources on a forward-going basis, that's when we really see, an impact. That's when we start to see something that's very special. And that, again, we have to drive through the public and the private sector.
Absolutely. Chris, coming here from Detroit to Dubai. So your first time here, or have you been here before?
No, but I feel like every time I'm in Dubai, it's a new city. There's so much going on here, but it's not my first time.
Well, anyway, first time at Hypermotion Dubai, of course, being a first show, inaugural show. How does it feel to be connecting with everyone again? Obviously, we've been through a pandemic in 2020. I think we're pretty much well and truly at the end of the tunnel. We've seen the lights. We're back again. How does it feel?
So I was talking with my wife about this on the way over, and I've had the pleasure of kind of engaging with different groups and different organizations and conferences around the world over the last couple months. But there's an intense desire for this. People want to engage, and so I always put everything through a kind of a mobility framework, because that's just the swamp I swim in every day. But when we think about that systems layer I talked about before, it's the connection of the physical and the digital. So what I love about this show is I think we're talking about the digital future of mobility. We're talking about the technical drivers to that future of mobility. But we're doing it here. And you can't replace on a Zoom, God bless Zoom, this. And so I think this is yeah, indeed. And so it's like a really amazing environment where the passion that in the people that I'm talking to here, the desire to move quickly, the true innovation, I think, around what are we going to build next and how do we start building rather than just talking about it.
Yeah. That's what doing, right?
Yeah, that's what I've been excited about the show so far.
Chris, thanks very much for your time, and well, of course, enjoy the rest of your time at Hypermotion. And you're going to go to Expo?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so I'm excited to go, and I've seen bits and pieces so far, but this is a once in a lifetime opportunity where you have a chance to see innovation alongside mission and aspiration. And I think that's what, in some ways, that's what this show represents. And you need all three. You can't just have something that's a cold-blooded kind of approach to, creating value. You need to do something that, creates value, because from a sustainable perspective, you have to do that to have a positive impact on people's lives. And events like this, they bring the world together. So, I think what you guys have done is really special with regard to all the stakeholders, being able to look each other in the eye and say, how do we work together?
That's what we're doing, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Chris, thanks for your time, and enjoy the rest of the show.
Thank you.